Hello, this is Professor Keen. We've been talking about the 4 guidepost constellations. Remember what those are. They provide a way for orienting yourself with respect to the night sky. The first of the guidepost constellations was Orion. We talked about Orion and his hunting party, which consists of a charioteer, Auriga, and Gemini, the twins, and his hunting dog, Canis Major, who's along with Canis Minor, and they were hunting the bull, Taurus. So if you remember that picture, you can remember the configuration of those stars surrounding Orion in that region of the sky. The second quadrant of the sky that we talked about was the damsel in distress, that is Virgo, and how Leo was walking past her, and there was Boötes the herdsman, who was reaching for the Big Dipper, which is the second of our guidepost constellations. Now we're going to talk about the third quadrant of the sky, and this is about Cygnus the swan and how Cygnus happens upon a battle. So Orion and the Big Dipper, as I mentioned, are not the only constellations with stories to tell. Cygnus the swan points us to an action-packed scene. Cygnus is inadvertently flying toward a battle raging between the Scorpion and the Archer. Scorpio, the Scorpion, has turned his stinger toward Saggitarius, the Archer, who in turn raises his bow at him. An eagle flees the mayhem, flying upward toward Cygnus to tell him of the danger. Meanwhile, the hapless swan flies along peacefully, following the music of Lyra, the lyre. Before we continue our story, let's take a look at the bright stars near the swan. Cygnus moves sideways across the sky as though being blown by a strong wind. The bright star, Vega, leads the swan in its travels. Another bright star, Altair, is following the swan's other wing. These 3 stars, Vega, Altair, and Deneb, create the famed asterism called the Summer Triangle. Remember, an asterism is a cluster of stars that do not themselves form a constellation. It may actually be easier to pick out the whole triangle than to find just the swan, since Vega and Altair are much brighter than the swan's body and wings. The swan is poised to fly right between Vega and Altair. Vega is on its leading wing and Altair is on the trailing as Cygnus moves sideways through the night. If you look farther across the sky, you can see that the swan is aimed directly at another bright star, Antares. These 4 bright stars, Vega, Altair, Deneb, and Antares, set the stage for the swan's story. Cygnus is most easily recognized as simply a T shape. Its brightest star is Deneb, which means tail of the hen. When skies are dark and clear, Cygnus forms a complete bird with long outstretched neck, wide wings, and trailing feet. The 4 main stars of Cygnus that form the T shape are bright enough to see any time stars are out. The stars marking the swan's head and 1 wingtip are next brightest, so look for these next. The rest of the swan is only visible on a darker sort of night. Lyra, the lyre, appears just forward of one of the swan's wings. Even though the swan is pointed south, he actually moves in the direction of the lyre. You can imagine that the sweet music of the lyre mesmerizes the bird and beckons it to follow. Lyra is a compact constellation made up of 9 stars. There's not much to see in this group, a squarish frame with 2 strings. It would be unremarkable except that it is home to our 3rd brightest star in the sky, Vega. You won't usually notice any stars of the lyre except the very bright Vega. The 2 stars at the base of the strings may be visible, but the rest drop off to 4th magnitude, so they require excellent viewing conditions. Aquila, the eagle, is in front of the swan's other wing. The eagle is flying directly towards Cygnus, the swan. Aquila has its brightest star in its head instead of in its tail. Aquila is flying away from where Cygnus is heading. He seeks to warn the peaceful swan that it is flying straight toward a raging battle. Aquila, the eagle, has outstretched wings similar to the swan, but this bird remains a stick figure even in a dark sky. You can imagine that the bright star Altair marks the bird's eye. The eagle is a fun constellation to find even when conditions are not great. Besides number 8 Altair in the head, bright stars mark the body, the wings, and the tail of the bird. Scorpius, the scorpion, has his stinger turned toward the archer and is ready to strike. The bright star Antares is directly in the path of the swan. The scorpion takes a low arc across the southern sky and is right along the path traveled by the sun, the moon, and the planets. In fact, the name Antares means rival of Mars, because the bright red star can easily be mistaken for the red planet. We'll talk more about the motion of the planets through the constellations of the zodiac at a later date. Scorpius has 14 stars that are third-order magnitude or brighter, making it one of the most complete constellations you will see in medium darkness skies. Antares defines the neck and makes a great anchor point for your eye while you pick out the rest of the stars that form the pincers, the body, the tail, and the stinger of the scorpion. Sagittarius, the archer, does battle with the scorpion. He follows the arthropod across the sky, keeping it in the sights of his bow. The stars of Sagittarius form the shape of an archer aiming his bow. He leans forward, pointing his bow at the scorpion, with his head tilted back. A plume curves up from the back of his head. Sagittarius does not have any first-order magnitude stars, but he is easy to find because of his proximity to the scorpion and the uniform brightness of the stars in his torso, head, and bow. It takes a darker night to pick out his plume and his feet. Some folks don't see an archer at all when they look at Sagittarius. It is common for people to view this constellation as a teapot, and it's easy to see why. The teapot shape is compact and is formed using the bright stars of Sagittarius. The pot, the handle, the lid, and spout are quite clearly outlined. Whichever shape you imagine, these stars are satisfying to observe. This now completes our story of Cygnus happens upon a battle. If Cygnus is visible, you will have stories to tell your friends about your new friends in the sky. You should try testing your knowledge by identifying the constellations in this story and the bright stars.